I also use the same technique in session room with my colleagues.
Oh, so
Yeah, well, with graduate students sometimes.
well, yes, it's not just a second because there is a lot of noise. I have to shut the window. Oh, much better. Sorry. Yes, yeah, and so I think it's since we arrived at working in this way and from very different positions and very different countries and cultures, it means that there is something in the air, so to speak, and I think it has something to do with the evolution of the position of the therapist. I think that I remember when I started to be trained, the figure of the master therapist was
Oh,
something
yes.
to look at, and so because so the idea was the therapist is this very
Yeah,
important
yes.
person,
Yeah.
and so it was possible to have all these ways of working with
Mhm.
teams that are very solemn. But today, I think people want people that, the client want us to be on the level, not exactly on the level, but not so distant in terms
Yeah,
of power.
yes.
In terms and
Yes.
so I think these ways are, keep us closer to the experience of the client. And so I
Mhm.
think there is an evolution, everywhere, more or less,
Mhm.
and this leads us to think, okay, how can go with this evolution? And I think this is what we try to do. So interesting. It's very interesting.
These days, in Japan, some psychiatrists or colleagues uh, are now trying to introduce the idea of open dialogue and developed in Finland. How
Yes.
do you think about the open dialogue approach?
I think it works. I think in order to work, you have to involve the whole, psychiatric structure. So it
Mhm.
needs because I know that in Finland, for example, where they introduced the open dialogue, they
Yeah,
had been working in the psychiatric system with systemic ideas for a long time, actually.
yeah, yeah.
So the system was already opened to
Mhm.
this thing, and so it was not a big effort. When they tried to introduce it in other countries, for example, in Italy, there are people who do that in psychiatric services, and it works. But once again, Italian psychiatry has been influenced by the systemic approach. Whereas I think
Mhm.
in other places, I would be curious because there are a lot of people apparently working with open dialogue in the United States. And the
Yeah.
United States, the psychiatric system today is completely closed toward the
Yeah.
systemic idea. And I wonder,
Mhm.
in such an environment, would it work or not? And this is my question mark. I think if people, if the other colleagues, I mean, the colleagues who are not systemic psychotherapists are at least sensitive to these ideas, it can work beautifully, actually,
Mhm.
because it's a way of, once again, a way of listening to what clients have to say. I think this is very
Yeah.
important, and this is another novelty that was introduced by dialogical approaches, and we call our present day approach
Mhm.
systemic dialogical because we maintained a lot of the original systemic approach, but we tried to merge it with dialogical ideas.
Oh, yeah.